Welcome to Torture Cinema, a subcast of the Skiffy and Fanty Show. I'm Sean. No, I don't say that. I was looking at her disappointment on her face and it's made me self-conscious.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanty Show, Torture Cinema.
Is that the direction you do it?
What? Yeah.
There's a script.
I didn't pull it up because I don't trust you.
Oh my god.
Just don't look at me during this whole podcast. Just avert your gaze.
The love, again.
I was gonna say, I'd say make my eye contact with Julia, but I think Julia's also really disappointed in you too.
Let's try this again.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers.
You raise walls, I destroy them. Let's see who prevails.
Just because something works doesn't mean that it cannot be improved.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Allow my sword to join you in the fight against evil.
The world needs us to chase dreams.
We have to dedicate ourselves each and every single day to this fight because I can't do it alone.
You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Welcome to Skiffy and Fanty Show, Torture Cinema.
96 minutes of Nicolas Cage's greasy, disgusting chest hair. Thank you, next.
I'm Sean.
I'm Alex.
I'm Julia. Oh, I'm Jen.
And I'm Brandon.
And our special guest today,
I'm Linnea. I'm a Swedish fan of the podcast and now also friend of the podcast. I'm so glad to be here, and you can find me on YouTube. I'm Robert Maria Reviews, and that is a movie reference in the name if you didn't get that. And I also have a podcast, which is kind of like Torture Cinema, except we also watch good films sometimes. And my podcast is called Star Crashed Podcast. So you can find
That's a
us.
reference.
Yes, that's a reference.
To a film we have watched.
we have.
I know.
That's where douche ex machina comes from.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you can find it on iTunes and, places where podcasts are found. So.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, we're glad to have you. And you get to join us for what a wonderful film we're going to do today.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have decided we would record together at Worldcon in Dublin. And the film chosen was not a particularly fun film. It was a film called Next, featuring Nicolas Cage and Jessica Biel.
Julianne
Moore. Yeah, and that one guy who's like Dutch and always plays villains.
You mean Jamie Lannister?
No.
not Jamie Lannister.
Mind you, Jen is running on like half an hour of legitimate sleep.
That isn't Jamie Lannister? He's the other Dutch guy that plays.
You're literally not in the podcast right now. You've just like crawled away. Jesus Christ. He is Dutch, but that's not the guy. It's the other Dutch guy.
Not the
How many
guy.
Dutch villains
the
are
other
there in
Dutch
the world?
guy.
He just always plays anyway, whatever. He was in the Peter Jackson King Kong, that dude. And he's in this.
I wiped that movie from my memory.
Okay. He's also in Wanted. And he plays the dad, so technically he's not a bad guy in that. Anyway, whatever. It's Next. It's based on a Philip K. Dick
Short
story. And I say based in the loosest sense of the term, even by Hollywood standards.
Like many Philip K. Dick adaptations, it is only adapted in a very loose sense.
Which leads us to what we need to do first, which is talk about what we're drinking, and then eventually we will get to the synopsis for this film. So I will start because we're all in Ireland, which means we have gone to a
Centra, which is like a convenience store but with beer.
Yep, and we've got various alcohols. So I am drinking a Guinness West Indies Porter, which Brandon, I think, properly described with a face glare that was, this is wrong on every level. I don't necessarily agree, but I don't have the experience that Brandon has. So.
Yeah. I can't.
That was the sound of ultimate suffering.
Pretty much.
Well, I got a Galway Hooker. That's actually the brewery, and it's a honey beer, which is quite delightful. Limited edition. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with my purchase.
I'm disappointed it's not an actual hooker.
Wow. No.
Well, I could be cuting the cute hooer. It's actually a beer called that. It's sitting right over there, guys.
Such charming names for alcohol.
All right, Julia, what about you?
I am drinking a Fox's Rock Red Ale, which has a fox on it, and I love that about it very much.
And you can get it at the convention center in Martins.
Okay.
Oh.
Yep.
Well,
okay.
if you want a beer with a fox on the label, you can have it too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Shout out to Fox Spirit Books. We love you.
And Linnea, what about you?
Yeah, I'm drinking a Sorachi Irish Red hoppy red ale brewed the Wicklow way, and it has a wolf on the bottle here, so it sort of matches Julia. So I'm very happy about that.
It comes from Wicklow Wolf Brewing Company.
Yes.
I'm glad we have our animal companion beers.
I have a Guinness Draft. This is Jen. You might not recognize my voice because this is my tired voice.
Yeah. Also, Jen, at periodic points in this podcast will be at varying distances from the actual microphone.
It's true. I'm wondering.
I'm probably not going to level this for her portions of it. I'm just going to keep her at varying audio levels just to mess with you.
She just gets to fade in and out of the podcast like a ghost.
This sounds accurate.
And then, Brandon, what about you?
I'm having an Orchard Thieves cider because I can't drink anything else here. I don't enjoy most beer, especially Guinness, so I had something sweet and it reminds me of soft drink back home.
Aww.
It also has a fox on it.
It does.
Oh.
Does it? I did not notice. Mm-hmm. I noticed the apple, obviously.
Up on the top.
Oh yes, a fox. Hi, fox.
A fox is an orchard thief.
Mine just has colonialism on it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem with beer tastes.
Brilliant choice. Yeah, that's what colonialism tastes like. I mean, you will drink it until morale improves.
Well, this podcast got a little dark.
Oh God. Have we forgotten what we're watching?
We have not. Which brings us to what we're actually going to be talking about, which is Next. And someone here has to explain what Next is about.
I'll do it.
Which is apparently going to be Julia.
I'll do it.
Wait. I just have to briefly curse out Becca.
Did Becca suggest this movie?
Becca is the one who created the poll this month.
Thanks, Becca.
And this is all her fault.
Yeah, fuck you, Becca.
She's been trying to get us to pick a Nicolas Cage film for months.
Did she do like an all Nicolas Cage list?
It wasn't quite all Nicolas Cage.
We've done a lot of Nicolas Cage.
Have we done Vampire's Kiss? And if not, we should totally
do that one. But anyway, so fuck you, Becca. And also I love you. And also, wait, yes, fuck you, Patreons. But also we love you. And thank you for this beer.
You're okay.
You did this.
Yeah. Okay. Julia, please tell us what Next is about.
So, longtime listeners might remember when we covered The Lawnmower Man, a movie loosely based on a Stephen King story that was so, in fact, loosely based on it that Stephen King, I think, sued them and won because it was nothing to do with his story. And Next is about as closely based on a Philip K. Dick story. The story in question does have a main character whose name is Chris, and that main character named Chris can see 2 minutes into the future. That is where the similarities end. Literally nothing else in the movie is like the short story. In the short story, there's like a future with mutants, and there's like been some sort of apocalyptic scenario. So we have mutants. Mutants are discriminated against. Chris has golden skin. And eventually Chris gets like captured by the government and tortured, but his golden skin is also a superpower that makes him hyper attractive to everybody, so he like seduces a government agent's fiance and impregnates her, and then mutants have like mingled with the regular humans, and that's the end of the story.
This explains why they chose Nick Cage, because he could not possibly pull that off.
So, I like you to keep that in mind when I tell you about the plot of this movie, Next, starring Nicolas Cage as Chris, a man who can see 2 minutes into the future at a time. He is a Las Vegas magician who has an act that apparently pays some of his bills, but he feels the need to supplement by cheating the casino by using his psychic powers to win at cards, but only a little bit. But for some reason, this really does upset the casino owners, who can tell that he's probably doing something, even though it's probably not counting cards, but it's like he's winning, but he's not betting that much, so they're not really losing out. I'm not really clear why they're upset, but they decide to chase him through the casino, and he decides to run away from them in true, like, action movie spy fashion, including, like, making a quick change in a bathroom into a Panama hat and all sorts of stuff. This is an action sequence that we get that will foreshadow the rest of the movie, where there are lots of kind of pointless action sequences that don't make any sense plot-wise. Anyway, eventually he escapes the casino, and it turns out that Julianne Moore and her team of FBI investigators are trying to find a nuclear bomb that was stolen from the US by Russians, and they're possibly going to detonate it somewhere, because that's totally how this works.
Russian played by Dutch people, by the way.
Russians definitely steal our missiles and then launch them. That is how nuclear war definitely works. Anyway, Julianne Moore's idea is that she's figured out somehow that Nicolas Cage can see 2 minutes into the future. I don't even know how she knows about him, but she's obsessed with this idea and thinks that he can help her find the nuclear bomb. Because if there's anything we all know about nuclear bombs, it's that if you find one 2 minutes before it goes off, you can definitely stop that from happening from somewhere else.
It's in the handbooks.
Literally, all the people she works with tells her that this is a stupid idea and she shouldn't pursue it, but she doesn't listen to any of them, and she continues pursuing Nicolas Cage, who has been having visions of Jessica Biel in a diner. So he goes to the same diner every day at 8:09, hoping that she'll walk in, because he knows that someday at 8:09 she's going to, but she's the only person that he can see further ahead than 2 minutes, except he doesn't know how long in the future he can see. Eventually, she comes into a diner. He envisions different scenarios of what might happen if he does different things to try to hit on her, and most of them don't work, but eventually he hits on one that does and convinces her to take him on a road trip.
Literally.
Where? To Flagstaff, Arizona, the most romantic destination in the world. But she says, we have to make a stop first. And she stops at the Grand Canyon, where she teaches Native American children. And when she's there, Nicolas Cage does a magic trick for one of them, and that makes her fall in love with him. Because if there's anything we all know about magicians who do sleight of hand, it's that if you do one thing like that for a child at the Grand Canyon, definitely people will fall in love with you. It's just the rules of love.
Yes.
After that, they go to a hotel and have sex, as they are contractually obligated to do once you do a magic trick in front of a child. And they wake up the next morning and Nicolas Cage is like, you're so sweet, let's be forever together, but first go out in the town and take a walk. And Jessica Biel's like, I'll go get you some different clothes. So she goes out, Julianne Moore intercepts her and is like, I need to talk to you about this man that you've slept with. Drug his drink, but wait 2 minutes so he doesn't know. Jessica Biel goes back and is like, oh, this is the best part of the movie. She's like, drug his drink. And Jessica Biel's like, why would I do that? And Julianne Moore says, listen, I know you teach for a federally funded reservation. That means we're on the same team. You should want to do this.
That makes sense.
Because that completely makes sense. All branches of the federal government always work together.
Always.
They all have the same values.
Definitely.
Yeah, they have meetings together.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Jessica Biel goes back and she pours Nick Cage some orange juice. He takes a shower. She puts the drug into the drink. He's gonna drink it. And she says, no, don't. It's drugged. And he's like, what? And then she whispers, because for some reason it sounds like she thinks people can hear them, even though they didn't send her in there with a wire. They told me to drug your drink, and I don't know what to do. And he's like, do exactly what I say. And gives her a very strong series of instructions that involve her driving a car off a cliff that will set off a Rube Goldberg mechanism of CGI effects with logs falling and I don't know what else. Cue another action sequence. Julianne Moore also almost gets killed, but Nicolas Cage saves her. To reward him for this, she kidnaps him, takes him back to the FBI interrogation room, puts one of those eyelid stretchers on him like in the end of The Clockwork Orange, and says, now you will be forced to watch TV forever until you can find where the nuclear weapon is going to be detonated, so make sure you can tell us 2 minutes before it happens. That will help. And he's like, okay, except that what he sees is the future of Jessica Biel blowing up because she's been strapped to a wheelchair with explosives by the evil Russians who are played by people who speak German, Dutch, and French. That makes sense.
International partnerships.
And she blows up. He's very upset. He tells Julianne Moore what he's seen. She agrees to help him if he helps her. They go. They stop Jessica Biel from blowing up. Everything seems okay. They say, it's over. Julianne Moore says, it's not over. Then they realize that they haven't actually found the location of the nuclear bomb, which is in fact out in the harbor and will blow everything up. And does. They all die. But we rewind everything. Nick Cage and Jessica Biel wake up in bed in the hotel. He says, hey, I have to go do something. You wait for me. I'll come back for you. And she's like, are you coming back? Because clearly someone that you met yesterday who hit on you in a diner and then had sex with you in a hotel is someone you will wait for indefinitely. And he says, yes, just wait for me and I'll find you. And then he calls Julianne Moore and says, I will help you, but I have conditions. And presumably they are going to find the bomb this time, ?
Who knows if he can, since Jessica Biel won't be there.
So I will just say that I was wrong. The Russians are not played by Dutch people. They're played by German people, which means I am really terrible at understanding accents. I apologize. And the fellow we were talking about off podcast, and I just have to share because I really enjoy him as an actor, is Thomas Kretschmann.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who has been in many things, usually playing villainous roles, or sometimes playing roles where he's told to be the villain.
So he's an evil German.
Yeah, which is just very convenient. And he does look suspiciously like Jaime Lannister, but he is not Jaime Lannister. But given that it's Game of Thrones, they're probably related and have had sex.
That seems legit.
Seems legit.
Yeah.
Alrighty then.
That's just how it works in Game of Thrones, like banging your family members.
Probably also next.
So are we going to get into our likes and dislikes?
Oh, yes. Okay, so we have to start with our likes and dislikes. I just need to start as well.
Yeah, you gotta start. Start us off, man.
What do I like about this movie?
It was only 96 minutes long.
Well, I can't... I know that the Minutes Guild is really happy, but
it couldn't have only been 96 minutes. It took at least 2.5 hours to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Yes. It did.
But alas, no. Something I actually like about this movie is that Peter Falk is in it, and while he is only in it for like all of 37 seconds, it is nice. He is a rather elderly Peter Falk. This is fairly at the end of his career. I don't think he does very much after this point. He is clearly very elderly when he does this role, but he weirdly still has the charm.
Yep.
And he managed to pull it off in a really delightful way. And I just like Peter Falk because my grandma made me watch Columbo and all of that stuff when I was a kid. So, and Princess Bridie's obviously in that and all that. So, it's a legitimate Peter Falk is in this movie. It's unfortunate for him that this is one of the movies he ended his career on. But sometimes you have to pick your battles, and this is one that he decided not to pick.
We can't all end on a high note like Gene Kelly and Xanadu.
Pour one out for Raul Julia, whose last role was M. Bison.
But he did it for his kids.
I mean, I'm just saying, that's the note he went out on.
I mean, at least it wasn't like Star Crash where, what's his name? Where he said...
Christopher Plummer.
Christopher Plummer said, he basically did it because he actually thought that it was interesting instead of for a paycheck.
I don't know if you guys have listened to that episode yet, but if you haven't, please do so to listen to me screaming at Christopher Plummer for trying to ruin my childhood.
Successfully. Alright, well, I'll throw this to you, Alex. Go.
Okay, so this was something that I actually watched this movie with 3 other people from my Airbnb, and they all watched it with me, and honestly the consensus was it wasn't that horrible. But the thing that we all came up with as remarkable and something we really liked is that for a movie that was made in 2007, the terrorists were not brown people.
That's a really good point.
And we were all very excited about that, because we were just like, alright, nuclear weapons stolen by the Russians, alright, where are the Arabic terrorists going to come in? And then we're like, oh my god, they're all white people, other than there's a brief shot of, it looks like some Chinese technicians putting the nuclear weapon together, but again, a multinational coalition that doesn't involve anyone, in a headscarf, so there you go. I like that.
Especially in 2007, when you think about that.
That's kind of miraculous.
Yeah, see?
Because everything was going full, they gotta be, Arabic people. Even when it's clearly they're not Arabic, but they just think that's what Arabic people look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good like. You get an A+ for the day, Alex.
Sweet.
What about you, Julia?
I actually think this movie was not terrible to women, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
It had Julianne Moore being basically like weirdly obsessed with getting someone who could see 2 minutes into the future, but playing a competent sort of badass FBI agent who was not played up as sexy. She was not a sex object. She just like did her job and she was good at it. And like at one point somebody asks like, is she single? No one answers that. No one dignifies that with an answer. The person who asks it is like a low level villain who later gets his comeuppance from the other bigger, badder villains. But we're not supposed to like him, and we're not supposed to think his saying that is like acceptable. And people actually
sleazy.
They think that she's making a weird decision and they don't respect that, but they respect her for doing her job, which is like pretty great and unusual to see in an action movie. Jessica Biel is also like for the most part actually not interested in playing people's dumb games as far as like being hit on in a diner. She's like, just don't. She has like an abusive ex who comes in. She does not actually want to deal with him, and she's not interested in that. The thing that Nicolas Cage does that actually gets her to be won over when he imagines all these scenarios, he imagines saving her from her abusive ex by beating him up, and that scenario doesn't actually play out well. She's just like, why don't you guys settle this between yourselves then, because I'm not interested. And the thing that actually gets her to help to want to be with him is when he tells the abusive ex to stand back but doesn't stop him from, like, instead of beating him up, he allows the ex to punch Nicolas Cage in the face. Which it's kind of messed up in other ways. This is definitely not perfect, but it's interesting to see that Jessica Biel is treated as a character who is not at all someone who is impressed by alpha male type tactics. The thing that makes her think that he's worth talking to is that he's like, hey, don't act like this towards this woman who obviously doesn't want to give you her attention, and then doesn't try to out-violent him. Which I think says something a little bit better about women. Also, there's a scene in the beginning where he's doing his magic act, and there's a woman in the audience that he pulls up on stage as a volunteer, who is played by Alice Kim, who at the time was Nick Cage's actual wife. They were married for like 15 years. They just divorced a few years ago, and as far as I know, they're actually still on friendly terms. They have a son, and like earlier this year, they were seen together like on a family shopping trip together. So apparently, that's not like a terribly contentious divorce. I think that's actually nice, and it's nice to see that this movie is kind of Alice Kim's character was again not super sexualized. She was pulled on stage, she was played as like the young wife of an older man, but it wasn't completely like skeevy. She just kind of like was brought up on stage. Nick Cage was like, your necklace is gonna fall into your drink. I was fully expecting a boob shot. Nope, we didn't get that.
Yeah.
So I have to respect this movie for doing better than I expected and doing better than a lot of movies with the way it treated women.
I have to counter that slightly by the fact that what they do say is okay to her is a completely manipulative douche nozzle who thinks it's okay that he's basically like...
We're talking about likes right now, guys.
I mean, yeah, because otherwise we'd be like, you have a stalker, and you're like, hi man, I just met, let's go on a road trip.
Yeah.
We're talking about the things this movie has done okay with.
Okay. I'll take it back a notch.
I feel like we'll come back
to that because it's a big fucking problem.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it. I do find it interesting that the scene with the older man from Korea, because that's part of the act, is he goes by the name Frank Cadillac, by the way, the Nick Cage's character.
That was one of my other likes.
Oh, was it?
when she's like, why is Frank Cadillac your stage name? And he's like, I took two things I liked, Frankenstein and Cadillacs, and mashed them up.
Oh my god.
It's kind of it's a good cheesy stage name, though. So.
And also, it's just super weird to be like, I really like Frankenstein and Cadillacs.
But that's like one of the charms for his character is like he just says these odd little things, and she's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, he's weirdly enticing with his conversation pieces, not necessarily with other aspects. Yeah. But what I was saying is that I thought it was interesting that they make the joke, obviously, that, like, he makes the joke that, oh, it's like, must be your daughter. And he's like, oh, it's my wife. So they're clearly making the joke about the age. But they don't make the older man, like, kind of creepy old. Where, like, he's not like Hugh Hefner, kind of, like...
No, it's especially interesting because there is a big age difference between Nick Cage and Alice Kim.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the movie respects the difference between her and her Korean husband in the character the same way that I get the feeling Nick Cage actually respected her as a person in an older-younger relationship.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Basically, like, I looked into it. I was like, well, who is that person? And I wanted to know more about, like, Nick Cage's involvement with women. Because I remember hearing, like, at one point, like, did he do domestic abuse? And, like, usually if you look into stuff like that, you find, Johnny Depp, Sean Penn, all sorts of horrible stories. And I looked into it and, like, no, it sounds like there was one point where they were, like, walking down Bourbon Street in New Orleans and got into an argument and someone filed a domestic violence thing, but she was like, I don't want to press charges, this is not actually a thing, and it doesn't actually sound like it was a particularly bad thing. So I kind of was relieved to see that in a world when so often men are just trash, this is maybe not an example of that. There's not a whole lot of dirt to dig up on Nick Cage.
He's just weird.
Yeah, he's a weird dude. Definitely weird.
If anyone is at all curious, either Wired or Hollywood Reporter, one of those, does the thing where they get an actor or actress to go through their career and, like, talk about the big moments. Nick Cage does one, and, like, a lot of people make fun of Nick Cage because his career is just bizarre. He's done a lot of, like, films most people consider pretty terrible, but he kind of goes through and he, like, talks about, like, what was I thinking about, or, like, how did I get the role, and it's really interesting to hear him talk about, like, he really perceives himself as, like, it's not about whether or not he's a good actor. He's, like, trying these things and trying different things and experimentations, and he really, like, takes his craft very seriously. It just happens, I think, that a lot of times the films he's in are not very well written.
It's not even just that. It's that he's kind of doing something that's not what we expect out of acting. He's pressing on the experimentation, which means it's weird and it's not what we expect as, like, realism and method acting. It's just very different, but that in itself is kind of a weird performance art thing.
It is, yeah. And I think we're in a low Cage year right now, but next year there'll be probably 11 films.
He's probably paid off some of the debts he's gotten himself into.
Yeah, collecting tombstones. Yeah,
he got into a lot of debt.
Yeah, I was telling someone about that one of the things he did is, like, he found, like, a bunch of tombstones that were going to be destroyed, and he was like, I want that tombstone. Doesn't have my name on it, but I want it. So he bought it and shipped this massive tombstone, like, to his house.
As you do.
I mean, that seems fairly normal. Yeah. He also has a pretty extensive, very expensive comic collection.
Yeah, I believe that.
Cool. Yeah. He's like a Superman. He was going to play Superman.
Yeah, right.
His son is named Kal-El.
I know, he's such a
He says now that his Superman days are over, that it wouldn't be a good casting choice.
Well, yeah, because he's 50-something.
But I feel like this is cool, because not everybody at 57 would say, oh yeah, I don't think I could be Superman now.
True.
But he's like, no, I'm like, my Superman days are gone. That's not a thing I'm gonna do.
He could play Superman's dad, though, but that's kind of Kevin Costner's got that on lock for the moment. Yeah. That's fine. He can off Kevin Costner and it'll be fine.
Okay, so...
Anyway, Linnea, please give us your like.
Well, as is the case with the most tortured cinema films, there aren't actually a lot of things to like in this film, but I'm gonna go with Julianne Moore. Just Julianne Moore in general, pretty much. Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily her best performance, but I think she's one of the better performances in the film. And she also looks really good in a suit, and I'm a sucker for a lady in a suit, so...
She does look really good in a
Her
suit.
suit jacket that's over the sweatshirt, the hooded sweatshirt, is, like, my favorite look.
She does look great. Also, like, bless Julianne Moore. She is absolutely selling as hard as she can that this all makes sense and is serious.
Right?
Yeah.
Every time she walks in and
Nick Cage is just like, I'm being weird, and Julianne Moore is like, I am a serious FBI agent and this is a serious plot that makes absolute sense.
And then her supervisors are like, I don't think it actually does make sense. And she's like, no, trust me, it makes sense. And they're like, yeah, Julia, you're a good girl.
She gets it by pure force. Yeah, force of will.
Force of will and spirit and character.
Which makes sense. She certainly is the one trying her hardest with the material. Because Peter Falk, I mean, I love him, but he was just like, I'm gonna play the crazy old dude. Let's play pool. And then he leers weirdly at her with his eye, and then he leaves. But Julianne Moore trying desperately, like, I can salvage this with my acting ability. I can.
No. She can't do it on her own, unfortunately.
Nobody can.
There's no salvaging.
Like, even Meryl Streep couldn't do it. It's not possible. Meryl Streep's great.
Challenge accepted.
Remake of
Dear Meryl.
Maybe I can be convinced to be on board.
That would be... I don't know.
Can we do a sequel to The Devil Wears Prada with Nicolas Cage?
Oh my god.
Now that I'm on board for.
That would be
I'd watch that.
very
Nicolas Cage is
interesting.
Anne Hathaway. Meryl Streep is his boss. Okay, so Jen, what's your like?
So the part of the movie that I actually do not hate is the end action sequence. Going through the whole raid on their compound and trying to rescue whatever the fuck the character's name is. Liz?
Yes.
His girlfriend, who he stalked.
I don't know if they've ever went official.
Is it stalking if you just think that she's probably going to be in a diner at 8:09 and go to that diner every day at 8:09?
Yes. Definitely.
I think it's stalking for people with powers that qualifies as stalking.
But
if you literally go through every permutation of saying hello without the repercussions.
Yeah.
So is Groundhog Day stalking? Because basically that's just Groundhog Day.
Oh yeah, it's super stalky.
Okay.
Except that it's even worse than Groundhog Day.
And they just did another one with...
Well, because at least Groundhog Day, the whole idea is that he can't just figure out how to hit on her in a way that works. He actually has to improve himself as a human being and stop stalking her, and then he gets the girl his reward, which is the gross part.
But Nick Cage will never learn. No.
He will never learn.
But no, I really enjoyed the actions. I enjoyed the application of the 2 minutes in the future power once they started applying it on a practical level of fighting through a bunch of people, like the ducks and the weaves and,
and he's
stop
pointing,
here
like,
and pointing.
there.
That whole sequence was actually really well choreographed, and I love Julianne Moore in that scene because she's the one that trusts him so absolutely and his abilities that when he points, she just turns and shoots, which granted is terrible policing, but but it was a really interesting way of looking at that power, which they'd sort of used it in the casino scene for himself, but I liked to see it on that scale of he's actually helping other people navigate a very dangerous situation. And I liked thinking about this as can we just throw this movie out and just have that type of super powered character be on a police procedural?
You basically just wanted Nick Cage in his version of John Wick, but with powers.
Oh my god, that'd be fucking awesome. Minus the Nick Cage.
Yeah, I can be convinced of that too.
See? It's basically that movie that's Christian Bale and Sean Bean, and Sean Bean dies at the end.
You mean every movie with Sean Bean?
Equilibrium, thank you.
Sean
That is what I talked about.
That's my favorite garbage
he's in the
movie.
beginning.
It is such a garbage movie, but it is so good, and there's lots of dodging of bullets.
Yeah,
so,
he dies in the beginning.
No, there isn't lots of dodging of bullets. There's lots of dodging of guns.
You're right. That's a good point. But anyway, so that's my like. I did like the practical application of the power.
All right, Brandon.
My like, as detached from the movie as possible, because good gravy this movie,
Also, like, Brandon, you saw this movie when it was out in the theater.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's the only time I've seen this movie. I'm recalling it mostly from memory.
But you actually paid money to see this
Paid money.
movie.
I paid money because I thought, an adaptation of a story by Dick, written by Gary Goldman.
Oh.
Maybe, because the thing about Gary Goldman is, after Big Trouble in Little China, which he co-wrote, he decided randomly that he didn't decide, but Paul Verhoeven asked him to do rewrites of the script for Total Recall, and he said yes, and it's more or less common knowledge that Gary Goldman kind of saved the script for Total Recall, and I guess at that point he decided he was on a let's adapt Philip K. Dick things train, because then he immediately wrote a script for Minority Report, and no one used it except for one scene, and he's cited as an executive producer because that scene is still there.
Oh my god.
And then I guess he decided he was going to adapt another Philip K. Dick, and that's what Next is. And I remember vividly going, I liked Total Recall. I liked most of Minority Report, including the scene that he wrote. Maybe I'll like Next. That was money that I'll never get back now. But I made that decision because I was committed to a writer that I still think is good. I just think that this script in a lot of ways... In fact, I don't even think it's necessarily the script's problem. As far as I've seen bits and pieces of, I've never seen the entire thing. But I do think some decisions that the script made are reasons why we feel the way we feel about this movie. But some other decisions are actually quite brilliant on paper, just like the concept is. And it's kind of unfortunate that this is apparently the last thing that he's written in a while.
I think you put Jen to sleep. I think it's hearing your explanation. She just died.
It's actually been everybody's explanation. It's just talking, and I'm like,
no more talking.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just drifting off to sleep because it's.
Oh, are we
very
helping
nice.
you get into sweet dreamland?
Yes.
So.
It's so
I
cute.
need so much help right now too.
Well, thank
Can you
Brandon.
all come back to my hotel and put me to sleep?
No, I will put you to bed on the floor in the bathroom, where you belong.
Oh no!
Let's do our dislikes. Let's do our dislikes.
Dislikes. Okay, well, it is time for Sean to rant about animals.
Oh boy.
And specifically reptiles. Because there is, in fact, a reptile
There
in
is
this
a
movie.
reptile, and I do not believe it belonged there.
There is a reptile in this movie.
So, there are many problems with the reptile scene. So this is one of the scenes which I'm sure will come up again when they go to the Native American
Have a soup pie.
reservation. Yeah, whatever.
Have a soup pie.
That. And I guess because she teaches there's something that whatever, right? And Nick Cage is like, I want to impress the girl by like, I'm gonna give kids a present, which is how he talks in my head. And so he magics up a leopard gecko, which is the animal that's present, which is a very common pet that people have, and they're lovely creatures and they're very cute. But it is a baby leopard gecko, which means it has been living in his pocket the entire drive over there because there are no leopard geckos in the deserts of Nevada or any of the other south. In fact, leopard geckos come from Tunisia. So unless he also has the ability of teleportation and can capture a leopard gecko, or they stopped at a pet shop and he stole one, there's no way for there to be a leopard gecko in this movie. Yeah.
Might I offer, perhaps he traveled to Tunisia 2 minutes ago.
How?
Counterpoint, what if he's Newt Scamander?
He's not Nuka Scamander because...
He's Nick Scamander.
Well,
Nick's brother.
I will just say he actually enunciates words. He's not like Eddie Redmayne who like talks like Andrew Garfield, who never says his words like a normal person. I can't stand them both.
Well, okay, just
Andrew Garfield as
let
Peter
it out
Parker
there.
just drives me nuts because I just want him say the words because he's just going like and you're like say the line for God's sake. Anyway,
tell us how you really feel.
I can't stand
So
him.
he brought a leopard gecko
So he-
all the way from Tunisia in his pocket.
So there's a lot of like animal abuse concerns here because leopard geckos, when they're babies especially, are fairly sensitive creatures, right? They're easy to get hurt. So if you're keeping one in your pocket, that's really poor practice. So that's one of the things you should not be doing. One, you should not be giving a leopard gecko to a child who has no fucking clue what they're doing, right? That this is not like it's like giving a dog to somebody like who's never even seen a dog before, and then being like, yeah, you'll be fine, kid. And it's like, no, like what do you feed a dog? Like where does the dog gonna shit? Like, what's the dog gonna live in? This poor kid's like got this leopard gecko, and he's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? And Nick Cage is like, oh, pinches his little cheek, and he's like, what a great little whippersnapper you are. All of this
just turned into an old man. Okay.
Yeah. It's just all animal abuse, and it's a problem that pisses me off because this happens with reptiles a lot. Because unlike dogs and cats, there is not a good market out there for secondhand animals, quote unquote, which means that there aren't a lot of rescues for reptiles. Reptiles are really hard to rehome. Leopard geckos are easier than most, but they're very difficult to rehome. So this poor kid living out in the middle of fuck all nowhere, who certainly does not have easy access to crickets or mealworms, has no fucking way to take care of this animal. He also doesn't know what the fuck he's supposed to do with this animal. And so he just gives it to him. And it drives me up the wall because it's perpetuating stereotypes and stupidity that leads to a lot of reptiles dying. So fuck this movie for that like 13-second sequence. That
in particular,
like they should have just given him like a rock and been like with a little face and like googly eyes on it and just been like, here you go, Bob, like whatever his name was, right, or Frank or whatever. Like, here's a pet rock, and the kid would have still been excited
his name
because
was Jacob. It was his birthday.
What? Who gives a shit if it's his birthday? He was just
Liz
trying.
does.
She does,
Liz
but
cares.
he doesn't because he's just trying to get some.
Yes, that's true. I mean, you're not wrong.
And he does end up getting some, which is also makes me sad because I want to know how many fucking leopard geckos he's got like hiding in his pockets. He's got like a fucking colony in there. He's just keeping leopard geckos. That's how he picks up chicks. He's just like, let me give like a leopard gecko to your kid, and she's like, oh, that's so sweet. Except most people would be like, holy fuck, you just like took a lizard out of nowhere and you're just handing it to children. What are you doing? You're like some sort of twisted, scaled fucking Santa Claus. You're like a Johnny Appleseed of fucking leopard geckos.
Okay, let Brandon talk.
Yes, sir. Please.
Now I'm wondering out of nowhere, in the same vein as the diner scene, if Chris just has random stuff in his pockets, inanimate and inanimate both,
just
I
so
was testing them both out to see the efficacy of this one get some strategy in particular.
I mean, I'd believe it. I would believe it.
That's how broken this movie is at its core. Every decision just leads to, is this what he did all movie?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that poor leopard gecko. He's fucking dead.
You're amazing.
Alright, Alex, what is your dislike?
Okay, so I'm going to actually just mention a very minor dislike before I get to my full dislike. When he's doing his sleazy lounge magician act, how many people are here from the Orient?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. And that's how the movie starts.
Yeah.
And you're just like, why?
What
But
year
remember,
is this made?
it can't be racist
2007.
because he has an Asian wife.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
That's
Yeah.
totally how that works.
Like, I don't even know why you would say that because like it was fucking 2007. No one was saying
It was
the Orient.
2007, and the woman that he calls up as a volunteer is literally the woman that actual Nick Cage in real life is married to at the time this movie is made.
You think she would have stopped like
Like-
between sets and been like, yeah, we don't call it that, dude.
There are so many things that.
That's probably why they got divorced.
One wonders. I mean, they lasted for another like 9 years after that.
He just kept saying the Orient.
but,
Like, you gonna call your parents in the Orient? She's like, fucking A, god damn it, stop it.
I mean, so my main dislike, and it's the dislike that I just kept coming back to again and again, like Nicolas Cage's greasy chest hair, It was just, I mean, for all that it was not, like, the female characters were not as treated as poorly as one would think. Just...
Oh, no, we have things to talk about.
Just the whole, like, the entire thing about, she's all, oh, I have this stalker, and it's terrible. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm gonna let your stalker punch me, and then we'll go on a road trip together. Mm-hmm. I'm like, has the person who wrote the script ever talked to an actual woman?
Yeah.
Oh, dear, yeah.
She even asks him, like, as long as you're not a psycho, right? You're not a psycho. And he's like, no, ma'am. He's like, well, that's what a fucking psycho would say.
It is a well-known fact. Like, you know, when you ask a cop if they're a cop, they have to tell you. If you ask a psycho if they're a psycho, you have to tell you. By the way, guys, if you ask a cop if they're a cop, they don't have to tell you. So right. Just, you know.
Cops are not your friends.
So just, I mean, there's just so much just incredibly bad stuff. And it's mostly around Liz because, of course, Liz is the object that he wants as his reward. And it's just, their entire relationship is so creepy. And I'm sorry if I stole your dislike, but this was like the main thing I hated so much. Because it's just like, also, I mean, Liz is so much younger than him, it's really creepy.
It is, yeah. This is the Hollywood, like, the whatever that factor's called, like the age factor.
Yeah.
Where, like, ScarJo's always, like, dating someone at least 20 or 30 years older in movies she's in. It's probably the same with Jessica Biel when she started getting popular.
I mean, the only thing in the entire disgusting sequence of him getting with Liz that I actually found kind of hilarious before then I thought, oh no, that's also really gross, is, you know, they've gone and they've banged, and she's like, wow, that was really good. And we were joking, like, oh, he finally put his seeing 2 minutes into the future power to use. But then I was like, it's disgusting, greasy Nick Cage who has been stalking this woman. And none of this is okay. It's just not okay. Yeah.
Am I done?
No.
It's just...
What? I'm waiting for my turn. I get to take naps when everybody else is talking.
No, it's Julia's turn next. I don't really have anything to say beyond Liz. Just everything to do with Nick Cage and Liz was just so not okay.
I mean, at least he was nice enough to actually use his power for that purpose. Because let's be honest, like, a lot of guys aren't doing that anyway.
So, I think this is a good segue into my dislike, which also has to do with all of this, and it's also has to do with Jen's like being that the practical application of this power was somehow good. Okay, Nick Cage, the premise is he can see 2 minutes into the future. That does not grant you the ability to dodge bullets. If I can see 2 minutes in the future and I know someone's going to shoot me, I can't see well enough to dodge that bullet. Like, does he also has superhuman fastness and strength and like he's got all, and he can only see 2 minutes into the future, but somehow he can see 2 minutes into the future well enough to make ornate plans to set up like Rube Goldberg CGI logs falling. Like, how? And he has like a dossier. He's basically like, here, Jessica Biel, do exactly what I tell you. And she has like a full plan of things that's going to happen. Same for Julianne Moore. And I know the idea is he can see slightly farther into the future if it has to do with Jessica Biel, but none of that makes any sense.
No.
And then to add to that, the thing, like, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, the number one thing people complain about this movie is that they feel tricked by the ending, and they don't like that. I didn't really care about that. That didn't bother me. What bothered me, and what I think is part of the problem with everybody feeling tricked by this, is that none of it makes any sense to begin with. Like, none of it makes sense. And as much as I wanted to give this movie credit for doing well by women in ways that I didn't expect, the not making sense also extends to literally every decision women make in this movie. Mm-hmm. Nothing that Jessica Biel actually decides makes any sense. Nothing that Julianne Moore is doing makes... How is she a competent FBI agent if this is her game plan? Like, how did she even find out that there was a random dude in Las Vegas who could see 2 minutes in the future to begin with?
That is a very good question.
Why is that the thing that she's obsessed with, that she thinks is going to save the world? How can you be obsessed with that and still be competent at your job, stopping Russians from blowing the world up? You can't. but we're supposed to believe that she is. It makes no sense. No one is ever going to actually think, you know what, I don't actually like psychopaths and I'm not going to deal with them, but this random guy that's hitting on me in a diner, I'm going to take him on a road trip, and when he does pull a leopard gecko out of his pocket to give to a boy that I teach, I'm going to decide he is the one and only person I should have sex with forever. Also, like, other things that Nick Cage does during that little sojourn into the reservation to win Jessica Biel's heart are things like, yeah, I hear the shamans in this sort of tribe can see into the future. Do you believe in that?
Oh God, that whole sequence.
And like, okay, just no on so many levels. So many levels.
I don't even know if they call them shaman.
That is one of the problems. One of many. So like, there's a lot that's super wrong with this. Now, I asked earlier, is it really stalking if what you're doing is seeing into the future that a woman is going to be in this diner and knowing that she's important to you and going there every day at the same time because you know that at some point she's going to be there. And I still question that because it's unclear to us. We never actually see Nick Cage's vision, so we don't know what he's seen that's supposed to happen. We know that it's apparently very important to him, and he knows that she's important to his fate, so he assumes that that's because they should be together. What we actually know to be true, based on the plot of this movie, is that the reason she's important to him is because he can see farther into his future, her future, he can actually stop the Russians from blowing up the entire world. So that seems like legit important and a fate thing. And like, I guess if you're going to go with that weird fate, like, I have to be in this place to have this interaction with this person, even though I don't know why, okay, maybe it isn't stalking, but literally everything he does to manipulate her is super gross and creepy. Like, all of the stuff that he does is...
He also sits there and, like, stares at her in the diner for a long time.
It's so gross. It's so creepy.
It's so gross. Anyway, that's my dislike.
So, I kind of... you will let me know if I am speaking out of turn, but my dislike literally follows from yours.
Okay.
Let's go for it, yeah.
Like, one of the reasons why I hate Next so much is... Okay, there are science fiction movies that are just pure male power fantasies, as Hollywood tends to do. You get used to it, you don't like it, but it happens. Every "this does not make sense" moment in Next is purely to establish the desirability of a man who on screen is obviously not valuable in that way.
No. The hair.
And the fact that the plot in particular is a man who just so happens to have the weirdest one-note superpower in the universe goes to a diner because he doesn't know but thinks that it will change his life somehow, and we the audience learn that that change in his life is that having a woman extends that power. Is actually very creepy. Also, Jen just snored.
She's jet lagged, folks. That's why.
Yes, yeah. we permit it. It's fine. But let it be known if you heard that.
It is permitted. Do you have a Skippy and Panty permit for that snore?
No, I feel like somebody needs to just be like, allow it.
Yes. Allow
it. So like all of my nitpicks about the movie, like literally every moment in which the movie does not make sense, is not just to make Nicolas Cage look cool, but to make him look cool about having a woman that he did not know when it was established that that would be cool. Yeah. And that's beyond creepy.
Yeah.
That's a certain different level of both bad writing and terrible conceptions of both men and women that kind of broke the whole movie for me, because like, does that mean that there is someone else somewhere else who, just because they might not have a soulmate at that moment, will just never value any of these random superpowers in this universe.
Well, so like also there's I think something really just very damaging culturally to the idea that if you just say the right words, then magically you will unlock the prize that is the woman that you desire to basically have.
Yeah, but like
and like that is the kind of thing that leads to pickup artist handbooks, which are based on the whole idea like if you can just say the magic words, then you can get the woman to fall in love with you. Unless she lives in Denmark, just don't go to that country.
Oh wow! Oh god!
Is Denmark bad?
We got to the
Denmark
place.
like kicked out pickup artists and they basically the guy who wrote the pickup artist book is like don't go to Denmark because they're the women there, it doesn't work and they're terrible.
Is that Rouge Fee?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because in Denmark they're just like we're not dealing with this bullshit. But like the whole pickup artist thing is based on the idea that you can like if you just know the right words to say, you can have that prize. And it's based on the idea that, you know, women aren't really people with free will and opinions. They're puzzles to be unlocked, which is not it's not how people or relationships work.
Yeah, but like further to that point, the movie is also driving home the point that your personal fate, your accomplishment as a man in full is fulfilled by unlocking the woman puzzle.
Yep.
And that, like, coupling those two things together is what makes that idea so dangerously sticky
for
like young men.
There could be a shadow version of this movie that it could actually be a reasonably good movie. It is not the movie that we got.
No. I'm a little depressed now.
Welcome to Torture Cinema. We don't call it Fun Time Cinema.
We took a movie that was just bad and we made it serious. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. It's just been one of those days.
Okay, Linnea, what's your dislike?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a lot of things to dislike in this movie, and I totally agree with you on the whole dynamic between Nicolas Cage and Jessica Biel in this movie. Is like, oh my god. And before I go into my dislike, I want to tell you the scene in the diner between when they first meet. I mean, it's so awkward, and we have in Sweden this expression that is skämskudde, and translated into English it means embarrassment pillow, and what it is a real or imaginary pillow that you like put to your face when you experience something that is really awkward or embarrassment that you don't want to like see it. And I wanted to smash my head into a skämskudde when that scene happened because oh my god.
Skämskudde.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna remember that. Oh god,
oh my god, I wanted to turn off everything and just it was so awkward. So that's more of a continuation of your dislikes. But I'm gonna go with the car chase scene in the beginning. This is when Nicolas Cage is escaping from
the casino.
The casino, yes, exactly. And the special effects in that is so bad. I mean, there's some rear projection that's going on that is like the level of Vertigo. And Vertigo is a great film, but it was made in the 50s. We have evolved somewhat from that. And now Jenny's snoring again. Congratulations,
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, in that chase scene, the train, that CGI train. Oh god, that was awful. That was so bad.
Like the CGI logs coming down the mountain. Though. God. Also, the way that you, the listener, hopefully have not seen this movie because you haven't wasted your time on it. Although, if you decide you want to because you like dumb action movies, like you could actually do worse. But like, just know that when you do, you will see a lot of CGI effects with objects that are really not to scale, and they look completely uncanny and weird. It takes you out of the movie every single time because you're like, there's a log, but it's like 5 times the size of the other things on the screen, or like a car, which is apparently the size of, I don't know, an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it's very strange.
This whole movie is strange. Well, thank you, Linnea.
Yeah, thank you. Jen,
are you
taught us
ready?
the school.
What did Linnea pick?
The car chase
scene.
Okay, that's fair.
So what's your dislike?
I'm gonna go with geography. I have to do it. The first time I know that something is horribly wrong is when they say they are going up to Flagstaff from Las Vegas, which is a very weird direction to get to Flagstaff, it being northeast of Vegas. Second is when the entire Havasupai tribe suddenly lives at Havasu Falls, not in the Havasu Canyon further away. And also that it apparently only takes them about an hour, maybe tops, to get down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
And back up again. How nice that must be.
They're
Never
just
done that trip before.
They're in very good shape. That's why Nicolas Cage takes his shirt off so you can see how
Very good.
good a shape he's in.
Good
I
shape.
feel like with his power, he just like chucks them both off the edge and then just rewinds so he hits everything at the right.
I just want to say though, like, okay, Nicolas Cage has to take off his shirt. There's a kid named Jacob. Is this movie actually Twilight?
Why do you put these nightmares into my brain?
If it was Twilight, wouldn't the kid have taken his shirt off?
Well, I mean, maybe this is an AU coffee shop version of Twilight where Nick Cage is Edward but also a werewolf.
Oh, this makes sense.
That's why he's so hairy.
He's Sparkle Harry.
And,
So, like-
and what I thought was just him being oily with man grease was like
that's
glitter.
His vampire glow. It also explains why Jessica Biel really likes him for reasons that are completely opaque to the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because her blood smells like freesia and he oiled her window to get in, which is romantic.
And then he stared at her all night.
Well, I mean, he
I
certainly
watch
did
you
it
when I
that
sleep.
He certainly did it in the diner. Just,
He probably does. Like you think like what he probably does is he just rewinds for like hours at night. He's just like rewinding every 2 minutes. I'm just gonna watch you. And then when she's like, "What are you doing all night?" "I watched you for 16 hours straight." So like, "Well, I only slept for 8 hours." "I rewound it for double time." Like, that's probably what he did.
And yet he never ages because he's a vampire.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's a vampire who got turned at like the age of 45.
Yep. That's true.
it's like, why couldn't you turn me when my knees were still good?
But yeah, they're just. Oh, and then their LA office is only about. I'm gonna go with 15 minutes from Las Vegas, and also only 15 minutes from Flagstaff.
Look, they took the highway.
They took the highway
They're the FBI. They can exceed the speed limits
by a lot.
By a lot.
A lot. It's something like I want to say between LA and Flag. You're probably looking at an 8-hour, 10-hour drive.
Yeah, I'm going to say like more like 10. But I think that what happened was Nick Cage just envisioned it in the future a bunch of times.
Oh.
So it only
Never
actually
hit any
took...
traffic lights, never hit any stop signs.
Yeah.
I think you might be right. And now that I think about it, none of that actually happened anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe he was just condensing it all in his brain.
He was like,
Or
here's
maybe-
to skip that part.
Or maybe he took nitrous oxide out of his pocket and gave it to his car for its birthday.
Oh, yeah. He did the thing where they're driving, and then he's like, wait, I got it. And there's like suddenly a switch on the dashboard.
Yeah.
And he just flips it, flames shoot out the tailpipe.
He flips it and it plays Happy Birthday.
But yeah, the just absolute flagrant disregard to distances on maps. One can only stretch that so far before it just breaks. You've just torn the map apart at that point and it becomes utterly meaningless. And if anybody ever says up to Flagstaff from north of Flagstaff ever again, this is not the first time I've seen this in a movie. I can't even remember what the other one was, but it always drives me crazy. I'm like, yes, I know it's on a mountain, but it's literally miles south of you. Stop doing this to poor Flagstaff.
What if it's when they rip the map, it's the map that's on the back of the Declaration of Independence?
National Treasure reference, yay. I will just say, Jen, that technically speaking, if you just keep going north, eventually Flagstaff is also north of you.
You're right. I feel like there also were bad maps in Season of the Witch, so this is clearly a Nick Cage problem.
Yeah.
I just don't think he cares about, like, geography.
He just doesn't care about maps. That's
That's his weakness.
Yeah.
That's how you get him.
He's the person who decides geography in all his movies, and he doesn't care about maps.
He's just like, yeah, you know, whatever.
If
North,
you-
south.
So all vampires have a weakness, right? But we always think it's like holy water and all, and crosses and whatever.
And you think his
but what
map
if Nick Cage's is maps? So if you like came up to Nick Cage, you smacked him with a map, he'd like melt.
He would die.
You'd be like the Wicked Witch. You just like I'm melting and just melt in
I
the
was gonna say, if
ground.
it's like a rolled up map, you also be like,
Yeah.
bad vampire, bad.
But when he melts, he becomes Gary Busey.
Okay. So have we all done our likes
Yes.
and dislikes?
Yes, we have.
Wait.
It's a
Yeah,
little
he already
You slipped through it.
Yeah.
And it was a really good one too. It was very meta and philosophical, and it was
We
fascinating.
were having a very
you can
intense
listen
back
to
and
it
forth.
later, and
I'll
you
listen
can hear
to it
all
later.
about your snoring permit. It's all good.
You get a snoring permit.
I'm so excited that my snoring's going to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that'll be our first snoring on a podcast.
It will be the first snoring on a podcast.
I just want to say one thing, that years ago, my husband's grandma was very excited. My husband's whole family is from Flagstaff area and Oak Creek Canyon and Sedona area. Well, I'm now pretty sure that her story was true, because she had the story. She's like, oh yeah, once we went into a restaurant and Nick, like, I don't know why, but the family was like hanging out with Nick Cage, and that was like a normal thing. And then your grandma totally does not recognize him, and then just tries to start selling him property in Arizona.
Did he buy it? Because he's really big on buying real estate.
He did not. As far as I know, she did not sell any property to Nick Cage. We were all very bummed about that, because yes, there might have been stalking if that had happened, but still, I'm guessing it was while this movie was being made.
Maybe,
that he was
but he
hanging
actually
out.
lives in Las Vegas. He moved to Las Vegas because of his tax problems, and Las Vegas doesn't have specific taxes that he wanted to avoid paying after he was in a lot of trouble for back taxes and owed way more than he could pay, which he blames on his manager. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it was his manager's fault. I'm not really sure. He made a lot of bad real estate investments, a lot of them. He also buys expensive collectible items.
Maybe she
And
did sell him a piece of property.
That's why I'm like, no, like maybe he bought property. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, so that is our cue to give our very quick final thoughts and our grade. So emphasis on less than 3 sentences, preferably 2 to 1 sentence, and then preferably also 1. So we will go to myself.
Yeah.
Which is my final thoughts.
Model the behavior you want to see, Sean.
It's gonna be tough. Look, so next is kind of like that film that other people tell you about that you shouldn't see, but then you watch it and then you feel like you've committed a felony while you've watched it. It's not good by any measure. And so for that reason, I am giving this not a full F- because it's not that terrible, but I will give it a D- because it's pretty bad.
So, in opposition to my esteemed colleague, I will note that this is actually not even the worst Philip K. Dick adaptation I've ever watched. That would be Total Recall 2012.
Oh, wow.
You know, Total Recall, fuck Mars, let's have elevators. It's a thing. So, you know, it was gross, and Nick Cage was gross, but I actually found the twist interesting, and it was not actually as horrible as almost any other movie I've watched for torture cinema, so, you know, give it a C.
I feel like Alex and I are very similar on this one. This movie isn't good. On the other hand, like, it definitely isn't the worst movie I've seen for torture cinema. It did do some things better than I expected. And there were a couple of times when I legit laughed, like the whole Frank Cadillac being from Frankenstein and Cadillac did make me actually laugh. I feel like the more I examine it, the more disturbing it gets. So it is one of those ones, it's the gift that keeps on giving in that way.
Yeah.
For that reason, I can't give it, I think, a straight C. I'm going to have to give it the sort of borderline C minus D plus.
You gotta pick one.
Oh, yeah, I have to pick one?
Yeah.
I feel like because it does perpetuate so much toxic messaging, I'll have to go with the D plus because I really do feel like that's important.
Yeah.
But it really isn't the worst thing we've seen.
It's fair. Linnea?
Yeah, as we sort of concluded here, there is a lot to dislike about this film, but Julianne Moore was in it and I liked her, and I have seen much worse films than this. The price for that goes to The Alpha Incident, which is the worst film I've ever seen. So I'm just gonna give this a solid D, which is, like bad but not the worst, essentially.
It's fair. Totally fair. Alright, Jen?
So you know how I was snoring during this podcast?
Yeah, that's why I'm going to be adding 3 grades to yours.
To make up for the lack of sleeping I did while having to watch this movie.
On Air France.
Okay, but I want to point out, though, that when we watched Season of the Witch, multiple members of this podcast fell asleep during it, woke up, and didn't realize that they'd missed anything of the movie.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
We've had that a lot.
The fact that you actually were able to stay awake during
I did.
this movie
I did.
is something in its favor.
I stayed awake through this movie because I had a very drunk couple next to me, which was a lot of fun. And so they kind of kept me going, and it was mostly me just wanting to shove it into their face and being like, look, this is such shit, watch it with me so you understand the pain that I'm going through.
No,
I never got that far, and I just had to suffer in silence.
They would have just told you they were reenacting a romantic Nick Cage scene.
So
yeah, that's exactly what they would do. So my grade is, I'm going to go with a D primarily for the reasons that Julia has outlined. And I'm very mad that the black guy who is Julianne Moore's partner is the only one shot in the fucking head at the end, which was just like, why would you do that to him?
On the plus side, that didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
True.
That's right, yeah, it goes
What
back
a twist! Yes.
Alright, so since Jen snored, I will add 3 grades to that, so that puts her up to an A. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
A plus then.
Alright, Brandon, bring us home.
Much like the movie itself, it will sound like a brilliant idea at first to watch 2 minutes ahead every scene, and then you'll find something to be utterly disturbed and disgusted by. But there are nuggets of good ideas that if you just took all of them away from Nicolas Cage, would probably have been a really rad movie. So I will give it a C minus.
Wow, that's much better than I thought you would give it based on how much you hated it.
Well, yeah, I hate it very badly, but the things that I like a lot.
Okay.
Oh.
Fair enough.
So you have a very sort of love-hate thing going with it.
So where does
If you hadn't
I feel
paid-
like this puts us at what, like a D overall?
Paul has to do those calculations because I can't do
Maybe
it.
it's actually like a C because I gave it an A plus.
Oh.
That's what we had. We had a C minus.
Damn it, Jen.
D-
Throwing
D
out the
minus.
curve.
A D minus. So like, but
Don't try to do
Sorry.
math. It's just
I can't right
Yeah,
now.
it's somewhere in a grade level.
It's a D.
Wait.
Paul's gonna listen to this and he will do the average and he'll put it on Twitter for
Like
us.
Paul is listening to this right now and actually yelling at the podcast.
He's like, it's a D plus. What are you doing?
Wait, is a C a 2? I need to know this now.
We're gonna see
Three
this.
is a 3.
What is a 3?
Yeah.
On
Really?
that note,
Yeah.
We gotta
end
stop.
this. Everybody
We
should
gotta
go listen to Linnea's podcast, Star Crashed.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
go listen to that. Follow her on the booktubes, and
Yes.
we will have links to all of that in the show notes, so you can go find that at skippingfanty.com. Thank you all for coming to this almost live in-person thing.
We're
Yeah,
only
we are
missing Trish because
currently
she
in
couldn't
live.
watch the movie, which was sad.
Well, Trish didn't watch the movie because the only way she could get it was to pay $13.99.
Yeah, which this
Which
movie does
let
not
me tell you,
deserve.
it is not worth
No.
$13.99.
No. Brandon can tell you.
No.
I wasn't paying that money.
Yeah. Not bad.
I mean, I
Not
paid
in
$3
2007.
and that was still kind of pricey.
It's pretty pricey. So, anyway, so you can find us at skippingfanty.com. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/skiffyandfanty. We're on the YouTubes at youtube.com/skiffyandfanty. You can support us in all those ways. Leave us reviews on the iTunes. I don't know. There's like other stuff, but like it's really late, and Jen is about to like make me have to carry her to the hotel room.
Oh yeah, you're already doing that. Thank you.
Shit. So on that
bad knee. Come
note,
on.
I will just let Jen know that before this podcast, I made sure that my chest hair was appropriately greased in Nick Cage style. And when I carry people, I do face to the chest. So
Without the shirt.
Without the shirt. Yeah. So on that note, awkward ending and scene.
You're welcome, citizens.
Stay frosty.
If you would like to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty or find us on Twitter @SkiffyandFanty, our webpage skiffyandfanty.com, or you can even send us an email at skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. The intro music for this podcast was taken from Rock Thing by Creo. You can find out more about their music on freemusicarchive.org.